Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. I'd like to welcome the brothers and sisters to our second lecture of the day for our pre-Ramadan seminar. We have with us our brother Ustad Abu Saleh Yusuf, who is also a graduate from the Islamic University of Medina and a graduate in the Faculty of Sharia, graduate in the Faculty of Islamic Law. His topic, inshallah, is going to cover concerning the meaning of fasting and upon whom the fasting is an obligation, and other topics and rulings related to fasting. Jazzak Allāh khairun.
Jazzak Allāh khairun. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah alladhi bi ni'matihi tatimmu salihat وبفضله تتنزل الخيرات والبركات وبتوفيقه تتحقق المقاصد والغايات وهو الذي يقبل التوبة من عباده ويعفو عن سيئات أشكره وأحمده على نعمه والحسنات وصلوات الله وسلامه على من بعث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بما جاء به إلى يوم الدين وبعد اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. In a hadith that was collected by Al-Imam Ibn Hibban on the authority of Abu Hurairah, it was said that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ascending the minbar, and he was climbing on the minbar, and as he was climbing the minbar, he said, Ameen, 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 3 times. So the companions came to him and asked him about the reason why he said Ameen. He said, Ya Rasulullah, you said Ameen 3 times as you was ascending the minbar. What was the reason for that? Then the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam had came to me and said, the first, which is, Man shahida Ramadan, yani whoever witnessed or fasted the month of Ramadan and had not had his sins forgiven, then that person would be in the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ said, and then Jibreel told him to say Ameen, so he said Ameen. The second one was, whoever has 2 parents, and these parents reach an old age, and he never was kind to them in terms of what a child and hukuk al-walidain, and they die, then that individual is also going to be in the hellfire. Say Ameen. Then the Prophet ﷺ said Ameen. The last one is, whoever hears my name being mentioned in a gathering, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and did not say sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he's also going to be in the hellfire. Say Ameen. And then he said Ameen. Those were the 3 things that he said Ameen for. Now, the shahid for the hadith, yani the case in point of why I started off with this hadith was because of the first part of the hadith, even though all of them are applied and applicable to all of us in our daily lives, all of them, there is no exception to the 3 points. But as for the first one though, because that deals with what we're talking about today, which is a sawm. Now, in the previous sitting before I sat, the Ustad said that there'll be a time, most of the things around Ramadan is repetitive in the sense of like when the season of Ramadan is coming, you see so many lectures out there. There's so many outlets. There's so many, you can get it on YouTube, you can get it on SoundCloud, you can get it anywhere. There's always so many people talking about Ramadan in a way so that we can benefit. That you will hear about Laylatul Qadr. You heard about it just before he sat. You're going to hear about it in the next Jummah. You're going to hear about it during Ramadan. So the connection between those preparations before Ramadan, during Ramadan, and this hadith, you're about to see the connection, right? Because whoever witnessed the month of Ramadan and never had his sins forgiven, then that person's going to be in the hellfire. Say Ameen. Why? Because there's so many chances, there's so many reasons for that to happen, for you to have your sins forgiven. Because there's so many reminders that leads up to the point, to the month of Ramadan, Jazzak Allāh khair. And during the month of Ramadan, and even after the month of Ramadan, to prepare for the upcoming Ramadan. So it's like sometimes our actions might feel monotonous. Yeah, they might feel repetitive in the sense of like we do this all the time. And that's why we need knowledge to sharpen our our actions, to give us the reason why. Why is the reason why we're doing this? To remind us of the reason why we're actually doing what we're doing. So a lot of us might have fasted last Ramadan and felt a different way, like, you know what, this Ramadan is coming, I'm going to do better. Like, yes, I did okay last Ramadan, but I know I could do better. For example, I didn't finish the Quran last Ramadan. Inshallah, this Ramadan I'm going to finish all of the ajza. I'm going to finish the 30 juz of the Quran this Ramadan, bi'idhnillah azza wa jal. So how do you attain that goal of wanting to achieve better or wanting to do better in Ramadan? Or with any action of al-ibadah? The best way to do that is by seeking knowledge. And that's why the first pillar of al-iman, not Islam, iman, is ilm. Yani to have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before serving Him. Allah wants you to have knowledge of what it is that you want to do before you actually delve into that which you want to do. Ramadan is not new for us, might be new for some of us, but every action that we do on a daily basis that is repetitive needs to be refined in terms of knowledge. Like, how can we do it better? How can we make this something that is better for us? So that's the connection between that hadith and the repetition or the repetitiveness that you see when it comes to Ramadan or when it comes to any action or the reminders to a Muslim in general. Tayyib. So now we're going to start our class, our sitting today with the definition of as-siyam or sawm. Yani, what is a sawm? It has two definitions. The first one is what we call the lughawi, which is the linguistic definition, and the second one is what we call the istilahi, which is the Islamic definition of a sawm. Now, a sawm linguistically means imsak, al-imsak, yani to refrain or abstaining away from anything. It could be from not talking, it could be abstaining away from eating, from drinking, from doing anything at all. Like, that's just what it means, abstaining away from something. And that's and the evidence for that is when Allah spoke about Maryam, when she said, فَإِمَّا تَرَيِّيَنَّ مِنَ الْبَشَرِ أَحَدًا فَقُولِي إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِرَحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَا نُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسَانًا. That if you see somebody and they ask you, why aren't you talking? Say that I have swore or vowed that I'm going to fast today, meaning that I am not going to speak to somebody. فَلَا نُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسَانًا. I am not going to speak to a person today. So that is the fast that she was alluding to, that I am not going to speak to somebody today. And that's the linguistic meaning of that abstaining from anything in general. Whereas in terms of al-istilahi, in terms of Islamic definition, it means abstaining away from al-mufattirat, yani anything that can break your fast. Not just abstaining away from food, but abstaining away from anything that can actually break that fast. As we know, there's so many things that could break a person's fast. An example of that could be eating, drinking. An example of that could be relations between a husband and a wife. That's something that could break your fast, and even though you haven't eaten, that your fast is still broken. So that is the Islamic definition of it, yani abstaining away from anything that can break a person's fast. And an example of that could be eating and drinking, and so on and so forth. Tayyib? Now that we're talking about the definition of a sawm, of fasting, the second thing we should talk about is the different types of fasting that there are. Because Allah says in the Quran, when Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykum as-siyam, kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Fasting is what Allah said in the Quran has been prescribed upon you as it was prescribed upon those that came before you. Was it Ramadan that was prescribed for those that came before us? What kind of fasting is it? Exactly. So that's how we know when the Prophet ﷺ came to Al-Medina, he found the Jews fasting the day of Ashura. And it would ask them, why are you fasting this day? And these are the people that came before us. If there wasn't fasting Ramadan, and then the Prophet ﷺ said that we have more rights to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam than you guys, so we are going to fast that day. But we're going to fast in a different way to you. So anyways, to break down fasting in Islam, the scholars of Islam have broken it down to 4 categories. The first being الصوم المفروض بالشرع, يعني the Sawm or the fasting that the Sharia has made compulsory upon us. And the only one that he has made compulsory upon us, which is from the pillar of Islam, is Sawm or Ramadan. Hence what we say in the pillar of Islam, Sawm or Ramadan. That's what the Sharia has made compulsory upon us Muslims. And the second one is As-Sawm al-Wajib fil Kaffarat. Yani the Sawm that becomes compulsory upon you for compensation, for compensation, meaning that you've done something and then you have to compensate for that action that you did. Al-Kaffarat, yeah. Tayyib, an example of that is a person, man lam yajid al-hadi, and a person that goes to make Hajj, and he was supposed to make a certain type of Hajj that has al-hadi is a slaughtering animal that we have to slaughter when we go and make Hajj. Depending on the type of Hajj that you do, it could be Hajj tamattu or the type of Hajj that you do. So if it requires for you to have hadi, yani slaughter a slaughtered animal, and you didn't have the slaughtered animal, then you would have to fast. Jamil. Another one is a person that makes a muhrim. So for example, if you're about to go and make umrah, and there's certain things that you're not supposed to do whilst you're instead of ihram, and you did those things, and then what you would have to do would be to either fast or or slaughter. If you can't afford to slaughter, then you can either fast as well. So fasting is always a substitute to something that you couldn't do if you've committed an offense in one way or another in the religion. Another one is kaffarat qatl khata. Yani if a person mistakenly kills somebody else, right? Remember, this is to do with fasting. So the first thing that happens is the person does that is فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ رُقُبَةُ الْمُؤْمِنَةِ. Yani if a person is not able to free a slave, that's the first thing you should do when that action happens, right? If you're not able to do that, and then you have to فَيَسُومْ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ. So a person then fasts 2 months consecutively. Another one is kafarat al-yamin. Yani when you say you're going to do something and then you don't do that thing. And then the siyam, the compensation for that would be for you to fast 3 days. Siyam thalatha ayyam. Or if you can't fast 3 days, then you can feed it'am miskin or free a slave. Again, it's always a substitute to a compensation that you can make. And these are all. These all falls under the sum that becomes wajib upon yourselves because of an action that you did that you have to make compensation for. Now, the last one as well. I mean, from them as well is kafarat al-jima' fi nahar Ramadan. So, for example, if a person has relation with their wife during the day of Ramadan, not the night, then there's a compensation that person has to pay, and that is that. First of all, فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ إِعْتَاقَ الرُّقْبَةِ. Yani, if you're not able to free a slave, that's the first thing you should do. If you're not able to do that, then you're supposed to fast شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ, as in the hadith of the man that came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and asked him that, oh, I've ruined myself. I did X, Y, Z in the day of Ramadan. What should I do? Can you free a slave? No. Can you feed people? I don't have. Can you fast? Can you fast 2 months consecutively? No. Can you feed 60 people? He said no. And then he ended up getting a free food for himself and his family because he was from the poorest from the village. A shahid from that explanation is that that's a fast that becomes wajib upon you based on an action that you did. Right? That's the second category. Now, from the third category of different types of fast in Islam is as-sawm al-wajib bi-nadhr. Yani if a person has vowed that they're going to fast, and you've made it wajib upon yourself by saying that I am going to fast. So even though it wasn't wajib upon you in the first, so a person has said that I am going to do, if X, Y, Z happens, then I'm going to fast this day. So it became wajib upon himself, as that was the case with some of the companions. So that becomes wajib upon yourself to fast now, because you have said that you've committed yourself to that situation. And the evidence for that is the hadith of Aisha, قال من نذر أن يطيع الله فليطعه ومن نذر أن يعصي الله فلا يعصي. Yani whoever has made a vow that they're going to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whoever has made a vow that they're going to disobey Allah, so if you've made a vow that you're going to do something sinful, obviously you shouldn't do that. But if you have, don't do that something that's sinful. Rather, what you should do is fast in place of that sinful thing that you said you're going to do instead. You guys get it? So that's what you do. Now the last one is as-sawm at-tatawwu'. The Sheikh mentioned it previously, and that is a voluntary types of fasting. And this is a fast that it's a nawafil, and it is something that we do. And from the likes of that would be fasting on the day of every Mondays and Thursdays, or fasting Yawm al-Ashura, fasting the Ayam al-Ashar al-Awwal Dhul Hijjah, and the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, fasting those days, or fasting Yawm and breaking Yawm, yani fasting a day and breaking a day, like the Siyam of Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. Tayyib. Yahumuna al-yawm, what concerns us today is the fasting of Ramadan, as that's what's approaching us. So now, to fast Ramadan, as the Sheikh has previously mentioned, there are certain things that need to occur before a person fasts the month of Ramadan. Yani, it's like it has a miqat, just like the salawat has a miqat as well. Yani, it has a entry time, yani an entry period. And from that time is by the sighting of the moon, right? Jamil. So now once the moon has been sighted, then it becomes, then we have other conditions, like the Sheikh also previously mentioned. We have conditions to fasting. So there's conditions of fasting, and there's conditions of having your fasting accepted. Yani, as it is sihha, yani shurut al-sihha wa shurut. Yani, tayyib. Out of the former dhahib, yani the Imam Malik did a good comprised it in a good way. So he comprised it in a very attractive way. He comprised it as a condition shurut wa shurut al-sihha. So it becomes wajib for an individual to fast. What is the condition that a person needs to do to fast? The first one is al-Islam, yani the month of Ramadan, not any other fast, the month of Ramadan. So the fasting becomes wajib upon a Muslim. That's the first one. ثم لقوله تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم. جميل. الثاني, the second one is al-qudra, yani that a person has the capability to actually fast these days of Islam. So the first one is al-Islam. Now, okay, all Muslim has to fast. Now the second one is capability to actually fast these days. And that would exclude, for example, the sabi, yani the kids, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, they have no capability to fast because they haven't had they don't have the power to do that. And then the last one is al-bulugh, yani that a person is supposed to reach a stage of, I'd say puberty, or a stage of mukallaf, yani puberty stage, yes. And that would also exclude the youngsters, that they hasn't reached that stage. And in the qudra as well, that would also exclude the point that I mentioned before this, the qudra, which is the capability of being able to fast. That would also exclude the ajuz, yani the elderly people that are not able to fast. So even though it becomes fasting is obligated upon Muslims, but excluded from that would be the people that are not able to fast. And from all those people are the youngsters and the elderly people. Tayyib. Now, with the shurut al-sihha, as-siyam fi Ramadan, yani the conditions of having it accepted, or sihha, in the month of Ramadan is, so if a person wants to fast, now that you know that you're a Muslim, you have the capability to fast, you're of age as well. So now, can you just go ahead and fast? There's certain things that you have to do to make your fasting accepted. From the top of that list is a niyyah, intention. A person just can't, if you have not intended to fast, just like any other act of worship, you just can go ahead and fast. It's not like that of the tatawwu'. It's not like the fasting of a voluntary fasting. If a person wakes up in the middle of the day, around 3 o'clock, noon, and says, you know what, I haven't eaten nothing today, I want to fast. Even though he didn't sleep with the intention of fasting today. That's a voluntary fast. He could go ahead and fast that day. But that's not the case with Ramadan. You just can't wake up in the middle of the day and say, you know, I want to fast for Ramadan. But your intention that we're talking about carries you from the beginning of Ramadan. Yani, before Ramadan comes, and before the Taraweeh that we pray that night, we know that everybody is at that intention. You don't have to utter it. It's just something that the place for your intention is in your heart. So that intention that you make from the beginning, from day one, carries you throughout the until the 30th day or the 29th day, except there's a break in between. So when a person travels, for example, he goes, I'm not fasting today. So he has broken that intention that he made because now he's traveling to a different country, so he's not going to fast. And then when he wants to resume his fast, he makes the intention again that I'm about to resume my fasting of Ramadan and I'm going to carry it on. The same goes for a ha'id, and a woman that's in her menses, or a nufasa, a woman that's a postnatal woman, yes. So if you have a break between your stuff, between your fasting, you have to renew that intention, and that's very, very important. Verily, actions are by the intentions. Jameel? Tayyib. The second thing is al-aql. Yani, to be sanity. That's the word I would use. I was going to say intellect, but no. Sanity is what you need to be present. Yani, because why? Because the qalam has been lifted from 3 types of people. فَالْقَلَمْ مَرْفُوعٌ عَنْ الْمَجْنُونَ وَالنَّائِمِ and الصَّبِي. So the qalam, yani the pen has been lifted off of 3 people, meaning that they are not going to be accountable for the action. Whatever they do, they're not going to be accountable for it. So a person has to be sane whilst they're fasting. You can't be, you can't ask a sick person to fast, for example. Not a sick person, as in a mentally ill person to fast, for example. Okay? Jameel. Tayyib. And then after that is الطهارة من دم الحيض والنفساء والنفاس. Yani to be pure from purity from menses, from a woman that's in the menses, she needs to be pure from that, or purity from a woman that's in a, purity from a woman that's in a, that just had a baby. So, postnatal, yes. So she needs to start bleeding, and then that way she can fast. But while she's bleeding, in both cases, she's not allowed to fast. Jameel. Thumma, who are those that now that we've established the conditions of fasting and the condition of having it accepted, now who are those that are exempted from fasting? قال المجنون والفاقد العقل الصبي قبل البلوغ. So a person that has lost their sanity is exempted from fasting. A mentally ill person, I don't want to say crazy, but a mentally ill person is exempted from fasting. If a person also lost their consciousness as well, they're also exempted from fasting. And if a person, for example, passes out, they haven't died, but they've passed out, so they're exempted from fasting. And that's why it's faqid al-aql. And also a sabi, yani a youngster, like a 2 or 3-year-old, 4-year-old child, is also exempted from fasting. قبل البلوغ, and before they reach the age of puberty. As for, and the Sheikh said, أما الحائض والنفساء فيجب عليهما الصوم ولكن لا يجوز لهما الصوم في رمضان. As for a postnatal woman or a woman that's in her menses, it's compulsory for her to fast, but not in the month of Ramadan. And listen to the ibara, Ramadan becomes wajib upon that individual that's postnatal, that's also in her menses, but not whilst she's doing that, not in the month of Ramadan. I'm going to give an explanation to that. Because why? Because unlike the majnoon or as-sabi, in that state, they don't have to make up that fast when it passes them by. You understand? Because rufi al-qalam and thalatha, and in majnoon was sabi. In that state, they don't have to make up their fast because they're no longer a mukallif, and they're no longer a person that the Sharia is demanding anything from that stage. So if a child misses their fast, obviously they don't have to make it up. If a crazy person misses his fast, it doesn't have to make it up, because in that state, just like it doesn't have to make anything up, he is not commanded to bring any act of worship in that state of insanity. Whereas a postnatal woman or a woman in the menses, even though she doesn't have to fast because she's prohibited from fasting, she still has to make it up later on. So the fasting of Ramadan is still wajib upon her, even though she's in her menses, but not that time during her menses. She would have to make up the fasting of Ramadan in Shawwal, maybe, for example, or in Dhul Hijjah, or in another month, maybe, for example. But that she's not going to escape fasting that month of Ramadan because of a condition. Jameen. ثم أما المريض والمسافر فيجوز لهما الصوم والفطر في رمضان. As for a traveling person or a person that's sick, and it is permissible for them to fast the month of Ramadan. It's also permissible for them to break iftar and not to fast the month of Ramadan. Wal iftar afdal lahum. And breaking and not fasting is not fasting is better for them. And there's so many reasons for that. Obviously, if a person fasts whilst they're traveling, then good for them. Allah, it's a rukhsa, and Allah loves it when you take His rukhsa. It's a provision. It's a leniency that Allah has given you. Allah loves it when you take His leniency. Even though some might say that obviously traveling in this day is different from traveling back in those days, as was the case of the man that was traveling and then almost fainted. And the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why did he almost faint? He said, because this man was fasting. And the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرْءِ الصَّوْمُ فِي السَّفَرِ. It is not righteousness for you to fast whilst traveling. But if a person fasts whilst traveling, then jamil, khair, that's nice. But it's better for you not to fast, because Allah also loves it when you take His rukhsa. Allah loves it when you take His leniency that He's given you. Thumma, as for a sick person though, there's different levels to a sick person. Now, a sick person that is not going to, a terminally ill person the doctor has already said that this person is not going to get better again. This person is not going to come back to health, and this is thabit. That individual as well does not have to fast the month of Ramadan. That individual it's been lifted from that individual. كما قال شيخنا قال إذا كان المريض لا يرجع برعه بشهادة الأطباء الثقات فلا يلزم الصوم ولا قضاء. If it's a person that's terminally ill, right? And the doctors have said that this guy is not coming back, it's not going to get any better. So fasting is not obligated on that individual, and also making up the fast qada is not obligated on that individual as well, because it has been attested that this individual is not going to return back to health. Do you mean? ثم قال وعليه أن يطعم مسكينا عن كل يوم. And it is upon that individual to feed a person for every day that they missed from fasting. وهو نصف الصاع بالصاع النبوي من قوت البلد. and that is for a person to feed them. It's called a sa', yani. So now a sa' is some would say, like, so 4 mud. This is like, so a handful is called mud, right? So if you put 4 of this, that could be a sa'. But if we're going to talk in layman terms, like in our terms now, it would be a food that can feed a person. That if you've eaten that food, you can say, you know what, this is a meal. I've eaten a meal and I'm full, right? What I can consider a meal, what you can consider a meal, that's what should be given out to people that that you're trying to feed on a daily basis. It was said that Anas bin Malik used to feed people bread, and in his old age, he can no longer fast. So what he would do is he would feed people bread and meat, and they would eat until they were full, and they'd be like, you know what, I'm actually full. So that's a way of measuring how to feed people. And there's nothing wrong with paying an establishment or charity that can say, you know, it costs £5 to feed for a meal, and that's what it is. Then you can give that to the charity organization, and they can sort that out for you. طيب ثم قال الشيخ وهكذا. And the Sheikh gave the tafsir of al-sa', but I've just given an explanation that would you guys would understand. And then the Sheikh said وهكذا للشيخ الكبير والأجوز الكبيرة اللذان لا يستطيعان الصوم يطعمان عن كل يوم نصف الصاع من قوت البلد. And that also goes not just for a sick person, a terminally ill person, but also goes for an elderly ill person. So an elderly person. So our grandma and our grandfathers, for example, right? They can no longer fast. It's an old age. They don't have to make up the fast. لا عليهم القضاء ولا صوم رمضان. What's upon them is for them to fast, but what's upon them is for them to feed a person for every day of the fasting. So if it was going to be 29 days, they have to feed a person for 29 days. If it was going to be 60 days, if it was going to be 30 days, they have to feed a person for 30 days. ثم قال ويجوز دفع الكفارة عن جميع رمضان دفعة واحدة. So a person can pay off their fees to feed a person in one go. Meaning that you can either pay it on a daily basis, meaning that I'm going to pay every single day of Ramadan, I'm going to pay £5 out. Or I can pay 5 times 30 will be 150, for example. I can pay that out at the beginning of Ramadan. Or I can wait until the end of Ramadan and pay 150. Yani al-amr wasi'. And it's easy, that you could do whatever you want. Yeah, you can pay at the beginning, you can pay at the end, and you can pay it on a daily basis. And that goes for the ajuz al-kabir wal-kabira, yani the elderly woman or the elderly man. And that also goes for a terminally ill person, a person that's not going to come back to health. ثم وهكذا حال المريض الحامل والمريض إذا شق عليهم الصيام. So, and that also goes for, that's also the situation for a person, a woman that's pregnant, or a sick person. Not a sick person that's not coming back from health, just a sick person. So if a person is sick, right? Say for example, cough or cold or whatever the sickness is, light sickness, and the person is pregnant. They also, عليهما قال الشيخ هنا عليهما الصيام يفطران وعليهما القضاء كالمريض. So what they have to do is that they also have to feed a person. Yani they don't have to fast the month of Ramadan whilst that's happening. What they do is they feed a person on a daily basis. But also, not just that, they also have to make it up al-qada. Why is that though? Because the situation is different. From the elderly person is not going to get younger, right? And the terminally ill person is not going to go back to health. Whereas the pregnant woman is going to go back to not being pregnant at some point. And the sick person, that's general sick person, is going to go back to health. So they can make that up. But upon them is 2 things though. They have to feed a person for every day that they have missed, and also make up the fast outside of Ramadan. Jameen. ثم moving on to those that are obligated to fast the month of Ramadan. We've just spoken about the people that are excused from fasting Ramadan. And now we speak about the people that are obligated to fast Ramadan. ولا يجب الصوم الرمضان على كل مسلم مكلف من رجل والنساء ويستحب لمن بلغ 7 فأكثر. So now, it is compulsory, it is wajib upon everybody that is all Muslim that has attained both of the conditions that we spoke about in the beginning of the dars, which is al-Islam, al-Qadir, wal-Aql, and is free from nifas and is free from al-Hayd. Now, this individual has to fast the month of Ramadan, and kullu Muslim mukallaf. وَيُسْتَحَبْ, whereas it is now, it is encouraged, or it is liked. It is encouraged and liked for sabi, for a person, for a youngster, فَمَنْ بَلَغَ سَبْعًا فَأَكْثَرُ. So if a child is around the age of 7 years old, that's when you can start training them how to fast. From the age of 7, فَأَكْثَرُ. Meaning that this person has not reached the age of puberty where it becomes obligated upon them, but it is just something that you could start training them to do at this age. But once they reach the age of puberty, and if that age was at 10, then it becomes wajib upon them to fast from 10. Or it becomes, if it's at 9, then it becomes wajib upon them to fast from that time. وَيَجِبْ عَلَى أَوْلِيَاء أُمُورُهُمْ بِذَلِكِ. And it becomes compulsory upon whoever's looking after the children. So for a parent or a guardian should always, it becomes wajib upon them to train them in the way of fasting. So you just don't leave a child until they're 10, until they reach the age of puberty and just say, you know what, oh, now you're going to start fasting. Because now fasting becomes wajib upon them. And they have to bring those 30 days. Whereas if they've been training from the age of 7, 3 years to train from the age of 7 until 10, that way they can, if they don't fast a day, good. Because they don't have to, because it's not compulsory for them to fast anyway before the age of puberty. So that this is training for them. So by the time they reach the age of puberty, then it becomes wajib for them. They will have no excuse to fast except if they are ill and the likes. Jamil. ثم أسباب أخرى مرحية. What is the other reasons why a person should not fast the month of Ramadan? It could be that if a person wants to take, it's not a sick person, maybe it's a sick person, but not sick right now, but they're on a medication, for example. Right? They have to take a certain medication on a daily basis, and this is something that the doctors are tested to, then obviously they can't take it at that time. And if it's only for that set time, then that individual has to make up the fast later on. For the person to make up the fast later on. But if it's somebody that is on a constant medication for the rest of their life, which means that they have to eat and take a medication, then they will fall into the category of the terminally ill person that can never take time off from fasting. Jamil. Tayyib. That brings us to when does fasting becomes impermissible? Fasting of any kind, when does it become impermissible? The first of that would be fasting becomes impermissible on the day of Eid, as we're talking about Ramadan. So if a person was fasting and they missed the fast during the 30 days of Ramadan or 29 days and decided they want to make it up on the day of Eid, that's not permissible for a Muslim to do. You can't make up a fast on the day of Eid. And this is the prohibition that the Prophet Muhammad has given, as this is a day of celebration, it's a day of gathering, a day of happiness. When a person is fasting, they don't have the energy to partake in all of these festivities that's going on in this day, so you need that. There's a wisdom behind it. So it becomes haram for us to fast on that day. The second time it becomes haram for us to fast would be on the day of Jummah, on a Friday. It's haram for a person to fast on a Friday. It's haram for a person to fast on a Friday by itself, singling out Friday to fast, without fasting on a day before Friday, which is a Thursday, or without fasting on a day after Friday, which is a Saturday. This is not permissible, and the hadith for that is the dalil for that is in as-Sahihain, al-Bukhari wa Muslim, when collected on the authority of Abu Huraira, when he said that he heard that the Prophet Muhammad said, none of you should fast on a Friday unless they fast a day before or a day after. And in another hadith collected by Imam Muslim, the Prophet said, do not single out the night of Jummah for fasting, meaning the Thursday night, because the night precedes the day in Islam. So do not single out that day for fasting, and do not single out that night, Friday night, for praying Qiyamul Layl. Yani, do not say I'm only going to pray Qiyamul Layl on a Friday. That's not from the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, and he forbade that. And if you're going to fast on a Friday, make sure it's a day. Make sure you fast a day before it or a day after it, if that's not your norm. If fasting on a Friday is not your norm, what does that mean? So, for example, a person that fasts Ayyam al-Bid, the white days, if the white days falls on a Friday, then tafaddal, fast on a Friday. Excuse from that also would be a person that vows to fast. So, for example, if my brother comes back today, I am going to fast from safar, from traveling. So his brother came back today. Then that individual, and that day was on a Friday, khalas, that individual has to fast that day. He's not exempted from fasting that day because it becomes a fast that he has made wajib upon himself. So he's exempted from fasting that day. And so on and so forth. If the fasting of Ashura, for example, mathalan, falls on a Friday, then you fast that day as well. So long as you're not just singling out Friday for fasting based on your own whims and desires, knowing that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has warned against it. Tayyib. Another day that is forbidden for us to fast is to fast every day. A person can't just say, you know what, I'm going to fast the whole year, 365 days. It's not allowed. And the Prophet ﷺ warned against it, and he praised a fast that's better than that, which is the fast of Siyam. Or after the Siyam Dawood. So what I say, yes. After the Siyam Dawood, alayhi salatu wassalam. So 3 people came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I'm going to spend the whole night in prayer. I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to spend the whole night, all of my nights in prayer. And another one said, I'm going to fast all day, like every day. The Prophet ﷺ said, I'm the best of you guys. You don't see me spending the whole night in prayer. I spend a third of it in prayer, and I spend a third of it sleeping. Hakada. And then the other one said, I don't fast every day. So where did you get this from? And that's when he said, and the best of fasting is the fast of Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. So it's not permissible for a person to fast every day. If you wanted to, you could fast a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off, every other day basically. Thumma, another day that is a haram for you to fast is al-wisal. It's something called al-wisal. It's when a person fasts, your fast is rolling on from one day to the next day. So it's not going to be an everyday thing. So for example, you fasted 3 days consecutively without a break in between. It's called al-wisal. And that's not allowed for us. The companions saw the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ doing it, and they asked him, but you did it, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? They said, yes, that's because Allah, I'm not like you. Allah has fed me in a way, Allah has fed me and gave me water in a way that you do not know. So that's a khasa'is, and that's something that's specific to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that he did. But he warned us against it, so we're not allowed to do that. But they said, the scholars of Islam said that the prohibition here to do al-wisal, the consensus among the scholars is it is prohibited, it's disliked. Fahim? And it's disliked. It is not haram, it is disliked if a person done it. And so if anything is disliked with Islam, it's best for us to stay away from it. Another day that it's not permissible for us to fast is the day of Sheikh. What's the day of Sheikh? A day of Sheikh, a day of doubt. It's a day when it's not clear if, so like you don't know if the moon, you haven't seen the moon, right? So you're just guessing. So you can't, there's no certainty that Ramadan is going to start. But you're expecting it to start based on the calendar that's already calculated, but not seen. So a person cannot fast on that day. And the scholars said that if a person was to fast on that day, And it turns out that they were right as well, that was the day as well. But because it was based on shak, it was not based on yaqeen, they still have to make up their fast again. Meaning that they can't count that fast as a fast that they have fasted. Understand? So for example, it's 30 days, right? They fasted the first day. So now it turns out that the moon came out on the second day. So we would have fasted 29 days because we waited for the moon, right? And that would have been the end of our fasting. This individual, yeah. Am I doing the math right? Now, this individual cannot say that they're still going to have to fast the last day with us. Even though now that they figured out that it's going to be 29 days, right? They can't say, you know what, I'm not going to fast the last day because I fasted the day before you guys. Because this day that you fasted before us was a day of shak. Hence why we didn't fast it with you. Otherwise, we would have fasted that day with you as well. So you have to always make up that day as well. And another day that the scholars, that the Prophet Muhammad has said, that or has given broad attention to, is a woman. This is to do with a woman that's married, right? And so long as the fast is not the fast of Ramadan, yani a fast that's not wajib upon her, then it would be nice, it would be in her favor to seek or to ask her husband before she does that, before she fasts, to fast. Because of why? Because it could be so many reasons why. For example, Aisha radiallahu anha would say that she used to make up a fast just before Ramadan in Sha'ban. Because why? Because because of us being busy with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For whatever reason, they were either traveling or they were serving, that they were doing things. So basically, they would give their time to the husband, and that could be in so many things. It could be that maybe he wants you to do something, and you haven't told him in advance, and it's like, the housework, for example, or maybe looking after the kids, for example, and the likes, and the relations, and the kinds. So much so that the scholar said that if a woman is fasting the fast that is not wajib upon her, and she hadn't asked her husband before beginning to fast, then if he needed her, then he could end her fast. He could tell her she could end her fast because of his demands that he wants from her. This is from the tanbih that we should pay attention to as Muslims, and knowing that everything has its place. Jamil, I feel like I might have covered majority of the things that I'm supposed to cover, so I'm just going to, and this is the last point I'm supposed to cover, so I'm just going to leave room for, I've got 10 minutes left, or 5 minutes left. I'm going to leave room for questions if anybody has any questions, or if anybody needs clarification on anything that I said that needs to be clarified, then I'm willing to answer that. Tafaddal ya Sheikh.
What about the people who observe the beginning of the fast in different parts of the world because the moon, they claim the moon is not sighted where they are? For example, we are in the UK and the moon is sighted in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
So the people from Bangladesh said, we're not going to fast until the moon is sighted in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
And we are living in UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this
the
is...
moon is sighted the day after in UK.
Jamil. Now this...
What is sooner regarding when the moon is sighted? Should we fast if we are told that the moon is sighted anywhere in the world, or wait until it's sighted anywhere we are?
No. So the Sheikh asked a question that we deal with on a yearly basis when Ramadan comes around, which is, if Ramadan comes which is, some people say, you know what, we have not seen the moon, so we're not going to fast. And we're going to wait until XYZ see the moon, and we're going to fast. And so that's the ikhtisar of the kalam of the Sheikh, and of the question of the Sheikh. So what we do, what this does, there's so many answers to this, and every people that bring the answer has their dalil for choosing what they chose, and choosing the path that they chose. So some would say we're going to use the nearest locality to us. So for example, if we could not see the moon in the UK, for example, and the people of Maghrib, for example, which might be closer to us, could see the moon, and then they would say, you know what, we're going to use the people that shares the same time zone as us. That's what they would say. Okay, why did I choose Maghrib? Or whichever country that shares the same time zone as us, if they see the moon, then that applies to us too, because because we're on the same time zone, right? That makes sense. It makes sense, because if we can't see the moon, and if they see the moon, then we share the same time zone. As was the case in the time of Prophet ﷺ, there will be people that lives in the Badia, people that lives in the outskirts of the village, of the city, where the skies are clear and everything, and then they would see the moon, and then come to the city and tell the Prophet ﷺ, and he would accept the kalam so long as that individual is a-tayyib, and that individual is trustworthy, and then that kalam can be accepted, and they will fast with that kalam of that individual, because they're around, it's a locality, they share the same locality. Okay, that's one illah, that's a reason for that. Right? Other people will say, okay, you know what, we're going to look forward to the Islamic country, which is or the leaders of the Muslims in this state. I mean, you know, like in this sense would be Saudi Arabia, for example. Now, we will wait until Saudi Arabia sees the crescent, the moon, and then we will go with them. And the scholars of Saudi Arabia have accepted that as well. Okay, cool. Tafaddal, yani, yes, you can use that, because this is masahil al-ijtihadi. Yani, they go and look. Sometimes they see it, sometimes they don't see it. And when they see it, they announce to the world that they've seen it, and that's the one that majority of the Muslims will go with, because this is more trustworthy, and there's more evidence backing that. So again, I would Allah A'lam is what I would say. Tafaddal.
Go for the breaking of the fast as well.
That goes for the breaking of the fast as well.
And sighting.
Jamil, when it comes to breaking of the fast, we break the fast with our time zone as well, which is when the time of Maghrib comes, and every city is different, every country is different. So now, when the time of Maghrib comes in England, we know what time it is. If it's 7:05, and this time has been calculated as well, not just by, it was calculated with the moon as well, obviously. So we trust that, and we break in accordance to that. Obviously, just because we're fasting here, just because we're breaking at 7 o'clock does not mean that the people that's our neighboring country, for example, in France, would also break at 7 o'clock. That might not be the case. It could be something else for them. But basically, you deal with your locality. Your locality is more, I would say, takes precedence when it comes to stuff like this. Jamil? Tfaddal, Habibi.
Well, question. If someone, for example, they weren't practicing at the time, they're Muslim, but they weren't practicing, and then they decided they want to come back to the religion and then observe the fast, do they have to make up the fast that they missed while they was not practicing?
Jamil, good question. It was asked to the brother before me. So the question the brother asked was that if a person wasn't practicing in the past and now they became practicing, so for example, they became practicing at the age of 20. Let's say for example, they became practicing at the age of 20, right? And they hadn't fasted and they reached the puberty from the age of 10, from the age of 10. So they hadn't fasted for 10 years, for example. And now they want to start fasting. What should they do? The answer is that, yes, it's a lot of fast to make up, but you would have to make up those fasts as well. And that's based upon the most authentic opinion of the scholars, because fasting is something that we would have to make up, not like salah. If a person misses the salah, because it's still countable. Your fasting for those days is still countable in the sense of like, if you thought about it, you'd be like, okay, 30 days, right? And I've missed 10 of them, so that's 300.
10 months, right?
Oh yeah, 10, I've missed, so 10 months, so that's still 300, right? So I would have to fast 300 days. So it's something that you'd have to make up, because it's quantifiable, and it's something that you could reach, and you should do that. So you'd have to make it up. You could do it voluntarily. You could do it between the present Ramadan. So for example, take it easy on yourself, spread it out. So you could do 2 days a week, and that could, before you know it, you could catch yourself up with that. But you'd have to make it up though. Tfaddal.
As it relates to the breastfeeding woman,
Mhm.
she have to
Yeah, the authentic opinion is that of a hamil. Okay, yes. The brother asked that, what about a woman that's breastfeeding? Does she also have to make up a fast as well as feed a person? If a woman is breastfeeding, she also has. If a woman is breastfeeding, she has to make up a fast. Last check, that's it. That's a guarantee. As for feeding a person, Allahu A'lam. Because what we spoke about was a hamil, and a person is pregnant, you know, and even that, some of the scholars would say, if you don't fear for the baby, then you should fast. But if you fear for the baby, then you should pay to feed the person, as well as also make up the fast, and Allah knows best. But for the breastfeeding person, Wallahu Alam, all I know is that the breastfeeding person has to make up the fast later on. As far as feeding a person, I think more research needs to be done to that. Tayyib. The question says, could you repeat the difference between different types of fast, e.g. a sawm that's compulsory and compensating? Okay, so I'll just go through that quickly. The question said I should just repeat the difference between the different types of fast. So the scholars broke down fasting into 4 categories. The fasting that is compulsory upon you, which is a sawm or Ramadan. The fasting that you've made compulsory upon yourself by taking a vow that you're going to fast, right? That's number 2. The third one is the fasting that you, voluntary fasting, that you just want to fast. And the fourth one is a sawm al-wajib fil kafarat, yani a sawm that you have to fast, and that you have to fast because you have done something, you've broken a rule in terms of like in fulfilling an obligation. Jameen? Tayyib. Tfaddal Hamid.
If someone misses a fast or a few days of fasting in Ramadan, and a lot of time goes past, like maybe many years, and then they remember it and they want to make it up, so they make it up, do they also have to feed according to the days that they missed?
Jamil, the question is asked that if a person is just kind of similar to what the brother asked, that if you missed your fast and now you want to make it up, and so many years ago, right? Do you also have to feed a person for the days that you missed? No. And what is known, or what I know, is that if you miss the fast from the past and now you want to make it up, then you should just make up your fast, and that's it. Mm-hmm. The feeding of people only comes to a person that's hamil, that's pregnant, a person that's old, and a person that is terminally ill. Mm-hmm. Huh? Tfaddal, Habib.
2 questions. So one, being aqid, is that a shurut of acceptance or just a shurut?
That's the shurut of fasting.
Is it the shurut of the fast being accepted, or because you said there was the shurut and the shurut being accepted? Being aqid, is that just a shurut or the shurut of it being accepted?
That is the shurut of sihha, of being accepted, yes.
Okay. And the other one was, could you clarify fasting on Saturdays?
Fasting on Saturdays, yes. There's a hadith around that as well that said that a person is not supposed to fast, single out Saturdays on fasting. So yes, there is that. I was going to mention that as well, but I didn't because it's, I'm not very certain on that. That's why I didn't bring that one up. But I did read up on it. But it's best for us to, I would say, not singling out Friday and not singling out Saturday. So if you fasted Friday, there is a hadith for that which I read, but I just didn't know about the sahih of the hadith, so I didn't want to bring it to you. So yes, I would say I don't know like if you could single out Saturday for fasting, even though I've read it, but I couldn't tell you not to single out Saturday as fasting. But I do know you can't single out Friday for fasting. Why, yeah, Khabib?
For the one that used to feed, like the elderly person.
Yes.
The elderly person that has to feed.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do if they haven't fed or they didn't pay someone to feed for such a long time?
Oh, then you have to just feed them now. That's easy. So if an elderly person has not paid the fidya, has not paid to feed, of not fed, they don't have to pay to feed, has not fed, a fasting person for every day that they miss, then just do it now. Just like you're making up a fast, you pay the fidya for that now as well.
What if they pass away though?
Then you have to still do it on their behalf.
Or it passes on to the children?
Yes,
Their children.
yes. If they've passed, because that's a haq, that's something that is wajib upon them that they didn't do. Even though they've died, you can carry it on for them. You can save them by doing that on their behalf. وبالله التوفيق والسداد وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله خيرا.